Might need to take that off, huh? Helps when the lens isn't covered. What's up, Purist? It's Bob from Purist Motorsports. I got to go to Mark LaMaskin's shop a few months ago, and he and I were just sitting around talking about stuff, and a topic came up that we thought might be good to discuss on camera, and that's car storage. All of the videos online talk about the typical things. You've got gas, you want to make sure you put Sta-Bil in it, and we're talking about long-term storage. If I could get it out. Long-term storage. That's something that to me is important because the 89 we just restored, you can watch the video, stay tuned for a card later in the video about the storage problems that car had, because it sat for 10 years, and that was something that caused us to take certain steps to make sure that when we started it for the first time, we didn't hurt anything. So, you know, like oil pressure, so you disconnect the coil to run the oil pressure up if it's been sitting a while, Sta-Bil in the gas, as I just said. You know, another thing people do that you really shouldn't do is start the car for like 5 minutes and then shut it off. That actually ruins an exhaust system from the inside out. Those are things that you find in other videos, but this video is a little different because Mark and I talk about long-term storage from another perspective, and he has a great point that is made throughout this video that would actually work well. And we've actually used it on that project because it's taking about 3 to 4 years to get it done. Enjoy the conversation. I hope you get something out of it on long-term storage details.
But you have to remember, with anything that's got a motor, it's better to drive it some than not drive it at all. And the same thing with the tires. The tires get flat spotted.
Well, and the other is that people tend to forget they will dry rot. Even though they look good on the outside, they'll still come apart. And of course, the outside you're dressing all the time. Most people aren't cleaning the inside. The tires, when they get to 6 years, that's kind of the manufacturer recommendation that you change them no matter what they are. It's the age of the rubber.
Right.
You know, it's a petroleum product, just like any plastic or any rubber. It all degrades over time. Now, it's different for a low mileage car, a Cobra R, or maybe even the 5,000 mile 89 up front. Having original tires on it for a show, you're going to pull it on a trailer, but if you're actually drive the car, tires are of utter importance.
And it's not just worried about getting a flat. What if that tire comes apart and rips up the fender and the original paint on a collector car? The biggest problem with car storage is that what we find a lot of times is people forget how long the car's been stored. You need to kind of document how long it's been sitting. One of the cars in here, this SA20, belongs to one of our clients/friends, and he couldn't remember when the last time he put gas in it. And it smells like bad gas.
Right.
So it's important to document those kind of things.
So a little register of some kind in the car is always a good idea. But always fluids, tires, now paint, that's something else to consider.
Well, you got to make sure that the car's in good shape before you put it away. I always recommend, you know, if the car it needs to be waxed, make sure the paint is clean. One of the other big problems that we find is people that misuse car covers, okay? They'll drive the car somewhere, and let's say I'm going to drive my car to work today, my collector car, and park it out in the parking lot. Then they pull a car cover over it to protect it. Well, they've just driven that on the road. All those road debris are on the paint. You might not be able to see it, but then they pull a car cover over it, and then the wind gets it or whatever else, and now they've scratched their car all up.
Well, not only that, if you've done that, you've just filled the inside of that cover up.
Yeah.
With the dirt and debris that was on
Correct.
the car. Well, even if it was a nice day,
right,
there's still dust that flies on the car. I mean, just own a black car and you'll know what we're talking about.
People ask us all the time, how come these cars aren't covered that are in the shop? Well, the shop's heated and air conditioned, and we get a little bit of dust on them, and you know, yeah, I could probably cover them, but it's just as easy when we're hooking the battery charger up to the car. And that's the other thing too. I'm the opposite of some people. I don't leave a battery tender on a car all the time, okay? I know too many situations where cars have caught on fire, batteries have gotten overheated if the battery malfunctions. I put the battery tender on the car once a month.
And to that too, I know with the Fox in general, and there are a couple of other cars, it's the key.
Yeah.
You get into the ignition switch, it's a very bad design. I actually did a post on this recently, and the F2 part number is the part that's supposed to be better, but they will catch on fire just sitting there with the battery hooked up.
Sure.
And so I have a lot of people ask me, well, I got a Fox, what would you recommend? I said, just disconnect the negative battery cable on it and set it aside.
That's not as important as the later model cars that have so much memory in the computer.
Yeah, that's
the
true.
Foxcar it'll run poorly for the first 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it won't know how to idle, but you need to drive it and have it relearn.
Yeah, but it's for that, because I know of guys that it was literally the car sitting, there was no tender on it.
Right.
The car caught fire.
All right.
When you started with the ignition switch, because the two power leads end up opening up and they ground out, and it starts a fire.
And you also have to worry about if it's hooked to the tender and the battery's gassing, you can end up creating problems in the engine compartment too. Yeah. Because if the battery gets overheated and the acid comes out, you don't see it for months because the car's somewhere else, and then it ends up eating the paint away and the frame rail and everything else. You just got to be real careful. I'm just not a firm believer in leaving batteries hooked up on stuff.
And I think that comes back to the register. Like, if you're going to do that, that's when you mark in that.
Right.
And, you know, I've done it this date to this date, green light, and then keep check of it. So it's really good to keep, I don't know if it's a registry or a logbook, I guess is whatever you want to call it.
But you also need to look at the car from time to time.
Especially through the winter, where people are storing, they're going to store for 4 or 5 months in some places in the country, maybe 6, and you don't go look at them.
Plus, what's the other thing that people neglect? Like you said before, antifreeze.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they forget that the antifreeze is so old, and let's say, oh, we're going to keep it in the car trailer for the wintertime. And next thing you know, the block freezes and cracks the block or the cylinder heads.
Yep.
I can't tell you when we had our shop how many people would bring us a car and go, it was fine when we put it away, and now it's not right. And you look at the coolant and you test it, and it's, you know, it's not protecting it. Farley.
Goofball. You're such a big boy.
Hey, the dogs have really enjoyed having everybody here. They don't understand that they're not the center of attention. Right, buddy?
Such a tall and lanky
Making
dude.
his debut on film. But I appreciate, you know, the talk about storage, and that's one of the things that I don't think people think about. They just throw the car in there, put the cover on it, and they're not prepared.
These are definitely some helpful tips. Thank you for that.
Yep.
That was the conversation we had with Mark, and I think one takeaway, the big takeaway from this is a logbook or notes or a clipboard with that inside the car. You really want to be able to reference something, and don't bank on your memory, especially if you have kids. I have 2, and my memory has gotten to be like my parents that I used to make fun of. So I like to say I have become that which I used to make fun of. Hopefully you got a lot more points out of that than just that particular one, but I think that's a highlight of the whole video. Please subscribe. We'd love to have you a part of the Purist Motorsports family. There are shirts like this on the website at puristmotorsports.com. So if you watched this far, I greatly appreciate you, and know that I'm very thankful for those that continue to watch and support the channel as well as the business. As always, whether you're driving them or restoring them, always enjoy them. Peace.